All Things Considered from NPR News.
I'm Robert Siegel.
And I'm Audie Cornish. The Citigroup fines are for misrepresenting mortgage-backed securities in the years leading.
Council Administrative Committee meeting. My name is Tom Lamar. I'm the chair of the committee, and with me we have Wayne Krause and John Weber, also city council members. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the June 23rd minutes.
I move we approve.
Second.
Okay, we're approving those minutes. The second item on the agenda is the perch request for a letter from council allowing beer and wine license within 300 feet of a school or church per Idaho Code 23-913 with both Rod Hall and Gary Reedner. So we've got Gary Reedner and Rod Hall coming up.
And then we've got
just in the nick of time.
We may have some other. We may have other people speaking on this too. Which of you would like to speak first? Maybe Rod.
Okay, I haven't talked to the applicant. My understanding was there was an application that was submitted from the owner of the perch, Mr. Singh.
Pardon me?
Mr. Singh.
Okay.
Who's represented as the new owner of the perch, and they are intending to convert or finish the remodel of the perch to make it a restaurant. They've been informed by the Idaho Alcohol and Beverage Control that in order to qualify for a restaurant endorsement, if they're within 300 feet, not for the restaurant endorsement, but be able to get the aspect where they could sell beer or wine. They might have represented alcohol there, but alcohol wouldn't be allowed there. Then they need to get a approval from the city council if they're located within 300 feet of a church or a school. And the university doesn't count. They're talking about high schools and grade schools on that.
So for clarification, is that for a restaurant license
or just to get the aspect where they can sell beer or wine in the restaurant?
Okay.
They could operate as a restaurant, but they want to also offer, my understanding, beer and wine for sale.
So, okay.
And I was just going to finish. The perch is located in what's a neighborhood business zone. So a restaurant would be allowed, but nobody could operate a bar there. And any business that operates within a neighborhood zone has to operate within the enclosed structure of that building. They can't have it outside. The whole idea of a neighborhood business is the business that's going to serve that part of the community or the neighborhood. It's not like large retail, and the activities that go on is supposed to be minimal disruption to that zone.
So I haven't been in there in I don't know how long. I'm not sure if I've ever been inside, but I go by there quite frequently. From the outside, it looks like a bar, or it has looked like a bar. So I'm trying to be clear that that's not.
No, what happened was
okay.
Historically the church has been, or the perch has been a grocery store or a C-store where they sold grocery items, and they also sold packaged beer and wine for consumption off-site. The last owner kind of started selling alcohol inside and was starting to operate as a bar, and it got the attention of the city, and we went in and investigated it, and they found out they were excluding people who were 21. The person came in, prior owner, with plans to try to show that he's going to develop that into a restaurant. Was going through the process, represented that to the community development that he was a restaurant, and during the process found it wasn't quite meeting everything. ABC got involved to get the restaurant endorsement. In order to get a restaurant endorsement, you have to show that 40% of your sales are derived from selling food. And they were giving him a chance to do that, and that was in the process up until this last spring. And ABC was doing an investigation and found out that individual was not going to meet the 40% sales, and they were basically just selling mostly beer out of there.
Okay.
And so that person gave up the perch, and now there's a new owner there.
So in essence, you have someone coming in applying for an alcohol license. It'll be up to the state whether or not they meet the endorsement for a restaurant, but it is required that, and this is what Rod has reviewed, it's required that the city issue a letter allowing them to sell beer and wine for on-site consumption, whether a restaurant or a bar, it requires a letter of waiver because it's within 300 feet of a school or a church.
Yes, John.
Why don't we ask the lieutenant to come up here and weigh in on this, since he is the Moscow Police Department
I think
representative
that'd be great.
up on campus.
Lieutenant Lemons.
What's your questions, gentlemen?
What do you think of this, Dave?
Maybe you should ask him what
Maybe-
his
maybe another question would
experience
be,
has been with
How has
the...
the performance of this establishment been in the past in selling beer and wine?
Well, within the last year, it's operated strictly as a bar.
And
Alcohol Beverage Control came in. They did probably about a 4-month investigation, and the Perch is a bar. It's not operating as a restaurant. The plan is that he's going to do a $20,000 remodel, or at least that's what he's told Alcohol Beverage Control, and put in a kitchen, including a hood. There's been no movement to that whatsoever. I was just there. So it hasn't been open for about the last month, and there's nobody working there. There's nothing going on inside that establishment.
Yes, correct, Gary.
So, Rod, in order for them, if the Perch wanted to continue to sell packaged beer and wine, they would be allowed to do that without the waiver from the city, correct?
Well, they'd have to have the proper license.
They'd have to have a license, but
Yes,
they
and
wouldn't
don't
need
have
the
that now.
waiver.
They would not need the waiver.
So this is solely for on-premises
On-premise,
consumption.
So the business could function as a convenience store and sell packaged goods if it had the right license for that,
And it has
In-
done that since the 50s.
in that right zoning, in that
In that zone,
current
yes.
zone.
And by the same token, a restaurant could be operated there without beer and wine sales as well. So the business still has value, apparently.
As either one of those other two
Absolutely.
things.
So
Or it
it's,
could go this route that they're asking us to do.
and it's a discretionary function by the city. Rod has included Idaho Code 23-913.
Actually, there was 23, 1011B, the one that, this came from the applicant, I believe, the 9, or 23-913 is talking about alcohol or liquor.
Oh.
And it has a requirement.
opposed
for
to beer and wine.
Beer and wine. If it was a bar and wanted to have a liquor license, they'd have to have the waiver from the city, but that's not what they're doing. They're dealing with the beer issue, and that's found under 23-1011B.
John?
Well,
Would it work if we were to basically do a wait and see, and if this person actually proceeds? Or is this what comes first? If we don't give him the blessing of the city, he won't put in? But if, like the lieutenant says, he's not doing anything, I'm not real comfortable with just saying, well, sure, go ahead, and then find out that, well, he kind of thinks maybe he'll do it sometime around Christmas,
Gary?
as far as
Sorry.
putting in the kitchen.
I'll defer.
Rod?
Well, I've talked to ABC down in Meridian. They told him that they would issue no license until he gets a waiver from the city.
Yes.
So in my mind, I believe the applicant should be informed. If the council's discretion is that they do not wish to issue the waiver letter, that he could be informed by the recommendation of this committee as early as tomorrow morning, and he can come talk to council if he so desires. But at that point, he wouldn't go out, and if his idea is he wants to put in a hood so he can get the restaurant endorsement so he can sell beer and wine on premises, he wouldn't be making an investment in the business until the council would make their will known before that.
Wayne, did you?
yeah, lost track what I was going to ask, though. That's interesting.
You're old.
I know that
Yeah.
feeling.
Been a long day.
I guess what I'm hearing is, at this point, we don't take action towards writing this letter until we see something.
Well,
Wait.
was the applicant aware that we were going to have this on admin today? He would have had the opportunity to be here.
I believe so. I mean, he brought in the application, my understanding.
So, at this point in time, I'm not going to support this without any comments from him, without any movement forward. We don't know what's going on. I can't don't feel like I can give a blessing on something I don't even know what's going to happen.
Yes.
The applicant, when he brought the waiver request in after being informed by ABC, went to the city clerk, asked if it could be put on the council agenda for July, what day was it, 7th? And told no, that was too short a time frame, didn't have time to put a package together. And she informed him at that time that it would be at the next administrative committee.
Okay. And he knew that would
Send
be
it to
today.
council, we'll talk about it.
We can, I mean, sure, we could send it on to the full council next week, and we can talk about it, but at this point, we don't have a recommendation from these three people to write that letter.
I don't think we have enough information here to be able to make a recommendation one way or the other.
Okay, so you want it to go directly to council?
Yep.
We will so inform the applicant and invite him to come in and make a presentation.
And they can decide, he can decide what he wants to do. It sounds like he's got two business options, or these other two, and then the third is what he's trying for, and that one right now doesn't seem supported.
Okay, we'll put it on the regular agenda then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Rob.
The third item on the agenda is the policy for evaluations and wage adjustments for new hires / promoted employees with Debbie Klein Robertson. And I have a feeling you're
Debbie,
going to
right?
Yes,
put on
I'm-
Debbie's hat and shoes and do it.
Hi, Debbie.
How are you? Okay. What we have here is a policy that we're trying to put a policy into practice. One could call it an administrative policy. But what the idea is when we hire people, the AMPS process, at least the way we've done it in the past, it depended on the date people were hired. If they were hired from January 1st until July 31st, then they would be evaluated in the normal AMPS process or evaluation process, which occurs beginning October 1st. Well, if you were hired the day after that, July 2nd, for instance, then you would actually wait until the next year to be evaluated. So this system, what you have, policy that you have before you, allows for if you are hired in those certain time frames that you are subject to a 6-month introductory period, and then you are evaluated after 6 months. So, and I'll just quote this. After successfully completing an introductory period, the employee will be giving a full evaluation. This is for employees hired between July 1st and December 31st. Receive a performance increase based on the matrix, in other words, what everybody else is based upon. Will then be reviewed annually via the regular evaluation process. So what it does is in their period of time, they don't have to wait a year and a half to have a full evaluation and any salary adjustment at that time. So what it does is it just prorates it throughout the year. We hadn't ever done this. We wanted to standardize the process. It's been through the Employee Advisory Committee. The management team has reviewed it, and that's why it's before you.
Well, I think it's more fair this way to have a prorated system.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move that along. I think it's better for people to, be treated the same no matter what time of the year they're hired. So.
Okay, consent agenda?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And you're going to continue to be Debbie on the next item on the agenda, I
How
think.
this happened, approving vacation.
Well, because we have we've got an open mind in this city. Salary survey item is the fourth item on the agenda with Gary.
Okay. What you have before you, and we talked about this in the budget workshop this morning, we have a need to have a salary survey conducted. We've not done one since 2006. In 2010, when we would have done another survey, of course, we were in the economic downturn at that time, and it was felt by the council, and I certainly endorsed it as well, as did the mayor at the time, that funding for a salary survey could likely better be used for either city operations or perhaps having employees receive some compensation increase rather than surveying. And of course, the feeling was, how could we deal with it anyway, as we were down in our revenues at that time? So at this time, as the council knows, we're moving ahead with a strategic planning process, a long-range financial plan, and what we would like to do is we would like to conduct the salary survey at this time. We have strategic planning monies that were budgeted in the legislative budget this current year that we will not use those funds. We won't use $20,000 of those funds. We would like to make those funds available to do a salary survey in this budget year. As the council knows, we had included funding in the FY 2015 budget for a salary survey. It was a little low at that. It was $15,000 at that time. But those funds will not need to be included in the FY 2015 budget if we do it in this budget year. So that would be our thought. It takes a little time to get that done. If we get it done, if we can start the process as soon as August 1st, retain a firm, and then move ahead, we'll have that information come fall when we're doing our strategic planning process. So that's the idea. It's more of a timing issue than anything else.
Okay, yep, I'm good with that.
Yep. I think we should move that forward. And I'm understanding we would probably go to consent on that, too.
That's fine, and we will make those adjustments as directed this morning in the
On the, for the hearing.
FY15 budget. Okay?
And that'll come to us, the date of that hearing is August
18th
18th for
is the
the,
public hearing on the budget.
August 18th is the public hearing on the budget, and all those listeners out there in TV land,
Come on out.
come on out and tell us what it's like. Okay. The last item on the agenda is the interlocal agreement. The
Okay.
interlocal cooperation agreement for joint operations of the Moscow-Pullman Airport, regional airport. I said Moscow-Pullman, not Pullman-Moscow, because...
So fine, it's always been Moscow Pullman on this side of the line.
Yep.
Okay, what you have before you is a redraft of the interlocal agreement, which is going to be renamed to a, I can't even remember the name of it, but the City of Pullman's attorney asked that it be named something besides an interlocal agreement. It'll be a joint management agreement or something like
Okay.
that. This agreement is working off, and you'll see in your packet, you have the 1971 agreement, which is the most recent interlocal agreement, which describes the management of the Pullman-Moscow Regional Airport. We were dangerously close a couple of years ago, back in the late 90s. We had circulated a new agreement back in 2007. We started the process again. At that point, the signatories to the agreement were Moscow, Pullman, WSU, U of I, Latah County, and the Port of Whitman. So obviously, each of their boards had to approve it. With that many moving parts, there was always somebody who had an issue with it, and it kind of lose momentum. So the FAA, which is the granting agency for the various grants that improve the airport or do the capital projects for the airport, has been comfortable with the interlocal agreement as it was. As you know, there's a runway realignment project that's coming up, and I will note that we've been operating that airport with the City of Pullman since the mid-'30s. So it is an agreement that's been jointly managed for many years. The FAA looked at that 1971 agreement, saw the configuration of the board, and the FAA has always looked to the cities of Moscow and Pullman as the sponsors of those grants. So if a grant came up, and you just saw one at the July 7th council meeting, $1.8 million grant for snow removal equipment and apron improvements out at the airport, the only signatories at the bottom of that FAA grant assurance agreement were the cities of Moscow and Pullman. They didn't want Latah County, Port of Whitman, WSU, or the U of I. Now, it's a double-edged sword. It also makes the cities of Moscow and Pullman responsible for the grant assurances. But the FAA looks to Moscow and Pullman for that job. So, as we're moving forward on this multi-million-dollar runway realignment project, the FAA looked at the agreement and said, you guys need to change this in a couple of ways. And Rod, Laura McAloon, Pullman City Attorney, and Kelly Brown, the attorney for the airport, myself, have worked through it, and I think that overall it's a pretty good agreement at this point. The major points that changed were the configuration of the airport board itself. Under the old agreement, the mayor of the city of Pullman is the chair, the mayor of the city of Moscow is the vice chair, 8 members on the board, and again, all signatories to the agreement. U of I, WSU, the port, who is now no longer on the agreement because they continue to provide money for airport operations but did not want to be a voting member on the board, and Latah County all paid a certain amount of money for their seat on the board, if you will. FAA said that was unacceptable. Those appointments have to be made by the sponsors. So, Moscow, Pullman, you're responsible for the grant assurances. We want you appointing the board members. So the agreement you have before you has 4 members appointed on Washington's side, 4 members appointed on Idaho's side. As I reported to you before, we had proposed a 9-member board, whereas Washington has 4 representatives, Idaho has 4 representatives. The mayor of the city of Pullman is also on the board, serving as chair, but would not vote except in case of a tie. FAA indicated that was unacceptable to them since the mayor of Pullman directly represents one of the sponsors of the airport. Then he had to have a vote. The only way we could then equalize representation on both sides of the state line was to give both sides 4 seats on the board. So as it sits right now, the mayor of the city of Pullman serves as chair and does have a vote. They appoint 3 other folks, one of whom would be a member-at-large or resident of the city of Pullman. One would be a representative of the president of WSU, and the third would be a resident of Whitman County who may represent the Port District. On our side, the mayor of the city of Moscow serves as vice chair, serving when the mayor of the city of Pullman can't be there. The mayor then appoints 3 members off our side of the line. One would be a resident of the city of Moscow. One would be a resident of Latah County who could represent the Latah County Commission, and the third would be a representative of the president of the University of Idaho, giving an 8-member board, all serving at the pleasure of their sponsors. That appointment process would be made in much the same way we make appointments to commissions. So the mayor would propose an appointment, would be confirmed by the council, and that would then be one of the Idaho members on the board. That was the first thing the FAA wanted, and that's why that's in there now.
Who are our members right now besides Bill and is John Kimmerling still?
John Kimmerling's on the board.
Bill and John, and who else?
And Ron Smith on behalf of University of Idaho.
Paul Kimball.
And Paul
Kimmel. Okay.
Okay. So that was the first big change, and the FAA has reviewed that section and says that is acceptable to them. Secondly is the opportunity for the city of Moscow to become an owner as a co-tenant in the airport. As it sits right now, ownership is held on that side of the line, real property by the city of Pullman. We're still looking into, there may be an issue of whether the improvements on the property are subject to ownership of the board or the city of Pullman. It's our belief that it's owned by the city of Pullman. The city of Pullman has indicated that they would be willing to grant a co-tenancy and undivided 1/2 interest in the real property and the fixtures of the airport. So the city of Moscow could actually be a co-tenant in the real property of the airport. I know the council has questions as to whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Because the FAA wanted this agreement as quickly as possible. In fact, they did tell us 2 weeks ago that the agreement needs to be revised or else the snow equipment grant can't go through either. So that's why the agreement's in front of you in this expedited fashion. The paragraph that's in the revised agreement gives the city of Moscow the ability to, or the option at the city of Moscow's discretion to be granted that undivided 50% co-tenancy or co-interest in the airport, tenants in common. It would require a separate action of the city council, but if the council indicated that they wanted to proceed with it, the city of Pullman would grant that interest in the airport. It's available to you if you want it. You do not have to take it. And until the council exercises that option, the real property stays in the ownership that it is now. The FAA does not require that the city of Moscow have a 50% interest in the airport. What they care about is that we are a sponsor and that we will continue to be a sponsor in the airport.
And to have control over the board.
Yes, the ownership interest is just something that the city of Pullman is willing to grant if the city of Moscow wants it. But it does not obligate you in any way to ever exercise that option if you choose not to.
John?
This second time we've gone through this, and I was in favor of it then. I guess I'm still in favor of it. As far as the question of should Moscow own part of the airport, that is still up in the air. As long as the FAA does not care one way or the other, then that's something we can work out at a later date. But I don't want to see these grants held up because we have not done a little housekeeping as far as the makeup of the board. So I am willing, glad to support this.
I concur with John.
And I've also given you my verbal support, and I will continue to support this. You said that you might need to retitle it and not call it interlocal?
Yeah.
Between now and Monday, we might see a change there?
It's a change in the title,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It won't change anything within the document.
So we'll see a final version of this Thursday or Friday?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'd recommend it be on the regular agenda. This is
And
it's a
it can
big
be
deal.
talked about again, and
Okay.
I think it's good for the public to understand the conversations that are going on about the airport and the importance of the airport to this region. John?
Just an information-only question. What would happen if we had a 4-4 tie? Once we have,
As in city council, if there's a situation where you have a straight-up tie for some reason, the motion would die for lack of approval, and people then start negotiating. What'll it take to get you to come over, and you have that
Okay.
active legislative negotiation. I can't recall a situation in my tenure that the airport board has ever ended up in a tie, even when they only had 8 members, or an even number of members. So I don't think it's a situation that would occur very often. I would rather have that tiebreaker if possible, but the people with the money are saying it's unacceptable, so that's something that we're going to have to live
Well,
with.
let's move it forward to the full council and get that moving
We will
on
do
the
so.
regular agenda. I think that's the last item
sir, it
on
is.
the agenda, so we will stand adjourned, and I will yield the rest of my time to Walter, but he can't have it because he can't start this early.
No reports.